Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last Velero community meeting of 2020. We are very close to the end of the year. Super happy to have you all here. Today is December 15th, yeah, we're going to dive into status updates, then discussion topics per usual. So let's start with Nolan.
Hey, I'm on community support this week to close out the week. I put this above status updates, but I wanted to let folks know the team here at VMware will be out on holiday between December 19th, that's this Saturday, and January 4th. The majority of us will be back. So we won't be having a community meeting between those 2 weeks for those of you who might be watching on YouTube. And we probably will not be answering on Slack or GitHub. There is an issue pinned to the top of the GitHub issues, it's also reflecting this. So just wanted to give folks a heads up that we will not be very responsive, if at all, over that time period. Other than that, been planning for next year, kind of where we want to go. Included in that is kind of picking up with 1.6 planning. That's kind of dropped the ball there. The big ticket item there from our team will be on design for multiple secrets per provider. And I know Scott Sego is looking at getting the ability for restore item actions to wait on their additional items. We may get that into 1.6, depending on how things work out. Other than that, been trying to get code reviews moved along. In that spirit, I want to highlight a couple that have been kind of old for the maintainers. The download request controller moved to KubeBuilder has been open for a long time. So I think I've got that approved now. Other maintainers, if you could please take a look. And the next one is actually fairly small. Setting custom certificates on a backup storage location is mostly a quality of life, kind of adding it to the command line interface. So I think that's it for me.
All right. Any questions, comments for Nolan? Any blockers this week?
I don't think so. I would really like to get that download request controller PR merged before folks disappear. So if folks have time to take a look at it, please do. I know Ashish is out today, but Bridget and Dave, if you could carve out time, would appreciate it.
Sure, I can definitely do that this afternoon.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, we have Carlisia.
Let's see. Hi. So I opened some PRs and did PR reviews. I am looking. So we're going to add a field to the backup storage location and the VSL. I always loop those two in my mind. So I didn't write it down, but the VSL is also included in that. And to add an object reference, so that can be point to a secret associated with that location. And then I started looking into that, and there is something. Apparently, there is a deprecation. They don't want us to use the Kubernetes object reference type. They're saying create a different type, but I have a bunch of tabs open to look into that.
Yeah, I looked a little bit at this morning, and I think I saw the same info. I think there's another type that I saw some of the folks in the cluster API team were recommending using instead. I don't know if you came across the same issue.
I did.
Yeah, so I think
there
there's
is a word Google Doc.
Cool. Yeah, so if you, I know I came up with some stuff, so if you want, we can chat after this if you want to, or I'm
Yeah,
sure
definitely.
you've got it if you've got like all the docs and everything already, etc.
No, I have some
Just
docs.
let me
but
know.
Let's see. Let's cross-reference.
Cool.
Because probably whatever we use, it's ideally what we use going forward whenever we need something like that.
So is that because basically they're looking to eventually move away from the local object reference, or they're
So
just not recommending it? For...
apparently there are different types of different types of object reference. There's like the object reference, and there's the local object reference. I haven't read, so I don't know why, but they are definitely saying this is deprecated. Don't use it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like the object reference type has a lot of fields that you can set in it, and I can't remember. There's a comment on the Go doc saying, don't use this one, use one of the specialized types.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the reason is the fields there are a bit random.
Yeah.
For what it should be.
Definitely want the local object reference.
Okay.
Object reference is usually for cross namespace, whereas we want to do some local object reference is for in the same namespace.
Okay.
If they have anything more specialized than that, then I'm not up to date.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you a link afterwards, Carlisia, but I also came across a secret key selector, which is like a combination of like a local reference for the secret name and then also like a thing to select which key in the secret you want to use. So that might be.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't tried it out. I don't know how it works, but I was looking at a few different fields or a few different things in the API doc. So
cool.
I'll send that your way.
Thank you. Yeah, and was looking at some secret stuff, mostly so I help out Bridget and with however I can, but she's got it. And but mostly because I need to do the command line changes to accommodate referencing specific secrets. And so my plate this week is just like PR reviews. I know I need to give some TLC to the Helm repo and the BSL, the credential for the BSL and VSL. And I also want to review Frankie's PR for the restoring API group version by priority. And that's it.
Yay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions, comments for Carlisia? Any blockers this week?
No.
Sounds good. All right. Next up, Bridget.
Hi, everyone. So Nolan and I are kind of splitting the community support this week because this is my first week doing it officially. So as of New Year, I think then I'll be like fully on the schedule. So I'm doing it for the first half of this week until I start my vacation, which will be at some point tomorrow or from Thursday. So I still haven't quite figured that out yet, which days I'll be working. As Carlisia mentioned, yeah, we've been continuing on the support or looking at the proposal for multiple credentials. We had a good deep dive discussion yesterday into the different options. So I'm still working on updating the design doc to include the things that came up in the discussion yesterday. Apart from that, I've also been doing lots of PR reviews but haven't gotten to the ones which are most important. So I will focus on that this afternoon. And then I also owe a PR for the Delve debugging support, which I mentioned last week. I have it all in place. I just need, I'm finishing off the documentation for it. So I'll get that up this afternoon as well.
All right. Any questions, comments for Bridget? Any blockers?
No, nothing.
Sounds good. And good luck for on your support.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been fine. It's all good.
Sounds good. All right, moving on to Dave.
Hey, let's see. So we put together a proposal for the Kubecon EU, which is coming up in May, and that's going to be on backup restore for operator-driven apps. And so we've seen some issues with, especially on the restore side, of like restoring an application that's controlled by an operator, and race conditions between the resources that are in use coming back versus the operator seeing things and starting to take control. So we've had some experience with like the Postgres operator, Istio, CAPI. So we'll try and pull that together, give some best practices, and also look at some future roadmaps for how to fix this problem permanently. And if anybody out there has had their own experience with that, and you have something to share, that send it in, and we'll put it into the talk of use cases and stuff. So there's that, and I started on a design for doing upload progress and managing data movement. There was a previous one that was there that got abandoned. I'm taking some of that, plus adding some newer stuff in that we've run into, and we'll have something for everybody to review after the new year. So that's it for me.
Sounds good. Any questions, comments for Dave? Any blockers this week?
Other than Google Docs eating my proposal?
Yep. Other than that?
No, I'm good.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you for sending that in.
I have a request. Not to put you on the spot, Frankie, but do you have an update? Actually, it is to put you on the spot. I'm not even going to say it.
Oh, no problem. Well, Carlisia was kind enough to mention my PR, and I don't know, do you think this is an appropriate place to mention, like maybe discuss the pros and cons of Ginkgo? I'm probably missing a lot. Like, I don't really even know why Kubernetes uses it. And I don't know if this is the right forum to mention it, if that's what you were thinking, Nolan.
I think we could do that in the discussion topics.
Yeah, I could bring it up in discussion.
Sure. Anything you need from us here? I know you had asked for some help on debugging things.
Oh, right, yes. I'm struggling to run the end-to-end tests on my machine, and it has nothing to do with Ginkgo. It's just I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I posted some, I can post the error messages I'm getting on the Kubernetes Velero Slack and maybe get some help there. But the code part is done. All the unit tests are done. I had to move one test from unit testing to end-to-end because I did need access to the cluster. So this thing is, I have it in as WIP, work in progress, but actually it is ready for review except for the end-to-end tests. And that's pretty much my update. And so to get the end-to-end tests done, I just need to get past the debugging.
Well, I want to look at your PR today. I actually pulled it, locally.
Oh, awesome.
This morning, but I haven't started yet. So I think it'd be great if you just, whatever error or problem you're having, just post it on Slack. And
sure. Do you? Yeah, sure. Do you prefer the okay, sure, I will. Yes.
Yeah, the Kubernetes.
The Kubernetes Velero one. Yep, sounds good. I'll put the error messages I'm getting there. And it's only with the end-to-end tests. I don't have any other error messages or anything.
Okay.
Issues with the restore code change itself. And actually, Raphael and I have been doing the end-to-end test manually and getting the results we expect. I just need to get it in code.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can work with you after this meeting and see where we can go with that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep.
And yep, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Frankie. All right, diving into some discussion topics. Carlisia, you got the first one.
We have a big announcement. We have a new contributor in the double excited because it's not a VMware, contributor. So I think that's good because potentially, give us a chance to get different perspectives. So his name is Genting, and he's from SUSE. Is that how you pronounce that company's name? Okay. So he works with SUSE, and he's been contributing pretty frequently to the Velero project. He is already a maintainer on our Helm chart repo, and he's super helpful even on Slack. So I'm really excited. He definitely deserves the recognition of being a core maintainer.
Yeah, definitely. Like the design doc proposal I put up for the restore, he pointed out some really good, where I was lacking and ideas for improvement. So he really does look at things critically and has really good suggestions. So I think this was a good nomination.
Yeah, he definitely understands the Velero code base, and I'm really excited about this. So just for the record, because of time zones, he's probably never going to make it to our community meetings. So we're not going to be seeing him, but he's definitely active.
I hope we can watch this though. Yeah, this is awesome. Congratulations, Genting, and thank you so much for stepping up and becoming a core maintainer. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mentioned to him that I don't want to make it so that he has to watch these videos every week. So if we are discussing something that he's working on, then we'll mention it to him. So he can watch the video.
Awesome.
I also dropped a link to our governance document for anybody else interested in becoming a maintainer. This kind of explains what we're looking for. We're essentially looking for people who are active consistently, and Genting certainly has been. He's been active in implementing features and responding to questions and things like that. So we're definitely looking for more external maintainers. So if you're interested, take a look at this. Also, you can definitely get in touch with us and see where we'd certainly be happy to guide you.
Awesome news all around. All right, Carlisia, you got two more here.
Yes. So if people remember, not too long ago, we didn't have a backup storage location controller, but then we added one that continuously does validation of the backup storage location. And that an invalid location could be because the configuration is incorrect, or the storage went down, there's no connection, or the credential is incorrect. So it will periodically loop and validate that the BSL is valid, and then will mark available. Or if it's not, it will mark it as unavailable. So, I keep running the logs, and then when a BSL is unavailable, there's an error message. But then when the sync controller runs, which also runs continuously, then we get another error message. It wasn't able to sync because couldn't get to the backup storage location. So I was thinking, why are we throwing this error twice? We should only do it once. Like pick one place, do it once, and be done with. So then I was thinking, this is a small change, but could have a big impact. So it's a proposal to consider. I shift the code around so that this particular change I think we should definitely implement, and it wouldn't have an impact other than optimize. If there are no items to sync, then don't even initiate the object storage, because right now we instantiate it first, and then we get to the point where, oh, is there anything to sync? No, continue. So we always instantiating it if it passes some prior checks. So that change is definitely worth putting it in, I think. The second part of this proposal is, what if when it's time to sync, we, instead of trying to fetch the BSL, fetch the backups, then see if there is any difference, what if we just check, is this backup location available? And if it's not, just move on to the next one, throw a warning or an error, but then move on to the next one. I mean, ideally not an error, because the BSL controller is already throwing that error. So just warn or do a debug message, move on to the next one. Now, for this to work, because we wouldn't be fetching from the store a priority, we would then also get a list of backups. This is my proposal. I'm not, there might, Nolan already pointed some concerns with it. So when the let me back up a little bit. So for my proposal to work, when the BSL checks in, tries to validate the location, the BSL controller, since it already got the store object, it would go and fetch. I mean, we only need the names, but I guess we have to fetch all the backups and store the names of those backups in a list, which would be a new field in the backup storage location. And when it's time to sync, we would fetch that list of backup names from the BSL. This is all before instantiating the object store. Then we will compare with what's in the cluster. And if there is any difference, then we go and fetch the object store, we instantiate that, and then we do what needs to be done. Yes, Dave.
So right now we can share backup storage locations between multiple Velero instances. So I believe the periodic syncing is necessary so that if they're sharing and A writes, B will see it eventually, right?
Yep. So the goal is to pull in anything that's in object store. It's really not meant to be live. Well, yeah, it could be used live. Ideally, you're using that second cluster in restore only mode, but yeah, it syncs to pull in stuff being written to the backup storage location.
I mean, it would still, I'm not, I don't think I understood completely the concern, Dave. So it would still sync, it just wouldn't bother to sync if the location wasn't available.
Well, no, because you're taking a list of items, and are you going to store it in memory? So if there's no, so say we have an empty location, so we have a bucket, we assign bucket to A and B, two different Velero instances, and they both come up and the bucket's empty. So they both say, I'm not going to sync it, right? Mm-hmm. Now A takes a backup, it writes it, and so it knows, okay, this location has stuff in it, I'll start syncing this. How does B know that it should start syncing?
Eventually,
because the BSL controller is already doing that loop. I'm just shifting things around. I'm not removing anything.
So is the BSL controller going to periodically pull?
Yeah, the BSL controller already periodically checks the location for validating. So at that time, it would fetch the list of backups and then just make that available when the sync controller is doing its own loop. Instead of doing the same thing, we just, check based on the list.
So you're talking about not instantiating an object store plugin. How's the backup storage location going to get the list of items without using the object store plugin?
I didn't say that.
No, that's what I thought I heard. So
no, so so that's exactly the point. The backup storage location is already instantiating the object store every time it loops for every single location. It's already doing that. So if it's, and then it checks if it's valid. If it's valid, it marks it as available. And if it became, not accessible, then it marks as unavailable. So I'm proposing that in addition to that, since we already have the object store, we also fetch a list of backup names. So when the sync controller runs, then it doesn't, when the sync controller runs, if it needs to do a sync, then it has to fetch the backup storage location, the backup storage again, yes. But it wouldn't have to do that unless it knew it had to do a sync. And the way you would know is by taking, instead of fetching the list of backup to then figure out if it needs to do the sync, it just fetches the list of backups from the BSL because the BSL already got that.
So the BSL is going to have a periodic sync.
Right.
The BSL already has a periodic sync. No, not a sync. I'm sorry. The BSL, yeah, naming is important. Yes, exactly. You wouldn't do the sync. No, the BSL, just to be precise, the BSL wouldn't be syncing anything. You just be fetching the names of the list of backup names. That's it. The syncing is still happening in the sync controller. It's just,
I think
instead of, yeah.
I think that introduces a dependency between the controllers. Not that we don't already have dependencies across controllers. Because then if you disable the backup, well, no, if you disable the backup storage location controller, you're not going to be able to use anything anyway.
Yeah. Because it would never be marked as available.
I'm not sure we're winning that much. I mean, are we winning much there?
If there wasn't any bad side effect, we would win a lot, yes. Because right now we are, if you look at the log, just look at the log for the sync controller, it's always instantiating the object store.
Yes, but now the backup storage location controller is doing it, right?
Right. So we have it happening twice in two places. That's my point.
I don't think it, but then it winds up having to instantiate it if there's anything in the list. So
yeah, but that's a lot less occurrences, don't you think?
I mean, it's a matter of what's your win, how much, just instantiating the object store plugin isn't necessarily a big hit. And so we'd have like the list. So would we store the list in the API server or would we keep it in memory?
No, we wouldn't keep it in memory. We would keep it in the API object.
No, I don't think we can keep it in the API object because we don't have enough room.
Okay.
Imagine somebody schedules their backups to happen every hour. That happens every hour. That backup storage location is going to have at least 24 times 30, and then if they set the time to live for 90 days, it's 24 times 90. That list of names could, maybe it won't. I don't know. That to me sounds like it could be an unbounded growth, and we would be putting it in space that is limited.
Okay. Yeah, that would be definitely a limitation. Because
you could set an arbitrary schedule length or schedule frequency, and we could fill up tons and tons and tons of backups.
So it's a reasonable question there, but why do we have then a health check and a sync? So I think that's the basic questions, right? Why do we have a health check and a sync? Why don't we just do them in one together? So we should have a good reason for why we split out the backup storage location controller to do the health check. All right. I mean, why is that not just part of the existing sync?
No, that's not a bad question, Dave.
So that would be where we could start from. I don't know the answer.
I mean, logically, having all the backup storage location operations in the corresponding controller is a lot easier to grasp, and it's better organized instead of like, oh, now let's make the sync controller do all of these other things as well. But it would be more efficient than, because there's also a rate limit issue with instantiating a object store, right? So when we designed when we implemented the BSL controller, we were giving a configuration option to just for the user to specify how the frequency of that validation, because we're concerned about the rate limits, and then we have then we have the sync just doing that all the time, no matter. I guess there is a sync frequency that can be configured too, so sort of equivalence. Yeah, maybe we should move that validation to the sync controller, since the sync is already getting the object store anyway.
Yeah, because the logical separation starts to break down to if you start passing it, like if you start having the data structure be manipulated by both, then you have to read both controllers to understand fully what's happening, regardless of whether that data structure is on the API server or in memory. In terms of efficiency, I can see putting it all in one controller that then handles saying, hey, is my backup storage controller ready? Okay, cool, sync it. And then just having that be all one contained operation could be a lot more efficient. Reduces the number of log messages, reduces the amount of API calls, which for folks on, that's especially relevant for people who are doing on-prem to a cloud provider or cross-cloud provider, because you've got ingress and egress billing concerns. Because it's a design pattern to have a one-to-one relationship controller to CRD, but you don't have to do that.
Okay, so oh boy, should we do this? Should we move?
I would like to see a design doc on it before we go with it, I think, because I think it could have upsides. They're just not super clear to me at the moment. Like if it's just getting rid of log statements, it seems like an awful heavy lift, but I don't think it's just log statements.
No, there's definitely an upside, the upside of not having to connect to the object store. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, I'm the one who proposed the BSL controller, I think. But at the time, this has been bugging me for a while, but at the time I didn't realize it would be redundant, because the sync is already doing that. We could just shove out the logic in there. Because we are making connections to the object store that is redundant, because the sync's already doing that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, object store connections don't bug me that much in terms of efficiency. I mean, you're going to do a git on list out the bucket, and it's
Well, some people, when we were working with the BSL, some people raised the concern of rate limiting. So you don't want to exhaust that by doing so many connections. So some people have that concern.
Yeah, and we did get some stuff from people who don't have like regular object stores. So like the Power Protect one was getting beat up by too many requests.
And also, it seems that the trend is going the way of like a lot of people wanting to do one BSL per backup, right? So
Definitely that'll start pushing the sync, but I mean that almost requires that you have like a flag that says don't sync it, because if you have one backup in the bucket and we're checking to see if somebody else, like almost like having a non-shared flag or something.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a trend, but there's certainly, like, I know Dell Power Protect is using it that way.
I think they delete them afterwards though, right? They use them, they're like a one shot and then they get rid of them.
The BSL.
I think so.
how can they restore from it if they did it?
They put it back when they do the restore. The Velero is really embedded inside of the whole
Okay.
Power Protect thingy, so it's got a whole bunch of controls and goes around us for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, they like manifest stuff as the storage locations as they need them. So I'm not sure I would design it around their use case necessarily.
No,
But
we're talking about one per namespace potentially.
BSL
2,500 namespaces, right?
Yeah, that's different, but yeah.
But you do wind up with a bunch, right? And also a bunch of backups. So
Right. So I would say, like, I guess I'm not opposed to making it more efficient. Like, and also I see Jonas unmuting, time boxing the discussion. Yeah. So I think I would like to see it personally. I'd like to see a proposal for maybe combining all of this into something a little bit more holistic.
No, this is Rafael. I don't know if this is related, probably will, about having multi-credentials for BSL as well. You know what I mean?
No, what do you mean?
What I mean that today we have a single credentials for all BSLs, but I have use cases where you want a BSL connected to a different AWS credential.
yeah, so that's a different one. There's a pull request for that going on right now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, he knows it's a different one. I think he's trying to say something that we're not getting.
Yeah, there is a pull request for that. I think I don't know if it's an opportunity to add more logic into BSL, have more self-contained parameters like the sync value, sync, don't bother to keep trying, stuff like this. Because I'll give the real example that today we have a product called Tons of Mission Control that set up the BSL. But if you want to set up another BSL on the cluster, we are bound to the same AWS credential. But there's use cases that we want to connect to another bucket from a different AWS credential and so on. And perhaps for that other bucket, it's a one-time thing, like the data protection. I just want to use it and delete right after.
But if the BSL is deleted, then the sync wouldn't find it to try to sync.
Yeah, what I'm implying is each BSL there is a potentiality that each BSL has own idiosyncrasies, your own parameters. Some BSLs can be ephemeral, some of them can stick. I think the design should accommodate there is going to be different natures of BSL.
Okay, I see. So right now the sync controller is the brain. I think it's the way I see it, is the brain of the system. Now you're saying let the BSL be configured in a way that overrides that. For example, saying
yes,
sync once only.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. Can we get some notes around this discussion and
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, sounds good. Really good discussion, going a little long. So let's move to the next couple of discussion topics, so we don't have a bunch of things that we want to wait for the next year. All right, Carlisia, you got one more.
Yes, so I opened that issue to address some questions that were raised when I was making some changes to the BSL controller. And not that I was making, that Genting made, and I was reviewing, and Nolan raised some questions. So I laid out everything. I don't want to take the time. I'm not definitely going to read the whole thing. I'm just saying there is a decision that needs to be made, and the decision might be the way it is handled, or like, no, let's use Genting's suggestion, that he made a suggestion for addressing this in a different way, or something else. So I just wanted to address this definitely for 1.6, because if it's it's going to be different. This is definitely a change in behavior, because we are introducing the ability for people to say, this is the default BSL. I mean, for the users to say that on the CLI, as opposed to the on the server side. That sort of applies, that gets configured as server startup. At any rate, there's some considerations. So I just wanted to address this, just nail this before 1.6. So I'm just asking people to take a look at it, see if there is any gotcha you can see, any or your preferred way of handling it.
I need to reread this PR, but my main concern is that the -- default storage location argument on the Velero server command needs to continue working. Otherwise, we introduced a breaking change. So
yes, so the gist of the question here is, you will continue working, but we have two ways to do it now. Do we give one precedence over the other, or vice versa? Or like Jensen gave a solution to also just do it automatically based on some conditions. For example, if the server boots up and it has a new name, then we make that the default, which is sort of like, might be surprised. I mean, there's no clean way to do this.
Well, I think I'll read this. I don't think we can just, I haven't read through this. You're right. There's not going to be a super clean way to do this. It's going to be a tough transition. But whichever thing we decide, we'll document it and let people know.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm trying to avoid is there has been a change to the behavior. There has been this new configuration that was introduced. I don't want us to ship 1.6 and then be like, oh, we should do this in a different way. So let's try to think. Yeah, let's try to think and just settle. And then if documentation is all we can do, then we do that. But then we thought about it, because there is a change that was introduced. And if we don't look at it, we might ship something that we don't want to.
Yeah, we need to make sure what's shipped in 1.6 is backwards compatible, such that we don't break existing installs that use this. And then when they're both specified, we need to at least let people know what the expected behavior is. So maybe it's just documentation, maybe we write a little bit more code, but yeah, I don't want to go into 1.6 without this answered.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Carlisia. Nolan, you got 2 items.
Yeah, so the first one is just kind of sharing. I think I hinted at this last week. So reporting issues for all of our plugins, which I missed one, for the AWS, Azure, GCP, and CSI plugins. All of those issues now go to the core Velero repo. The vSphere plugin has its own team. Issues still go to them, and Helm charts still go to the Helm chart repo. We've had issues getting visibility on it, issues in other repos, and we didn't want to take the time to automate syncing across the other repositories. So things like milestones, labels, I know there's ways to automate that. I think Terraform can do that, but we decided to pull everything together into one spot. Additionally, we're using GitHub projects to automate things. And there's GitHub Actions that support GitHub projects, but they don't support GitHub organization project boards very well. So that is the motivation for moving most everything into the Velero repo for issues. Any PR for a repository will still go to that repository. So if you need something in the AWS plugin or the CSI plugin, you'd still make a PR against that repo. Also, we made a support board at that link. This is mostly what the support team will be looking at. Brand new issues will get added to this board. And we have a grooming meeting every week to take a look at them, make sure they get answered. And then we double check to see if people have gotten back to us. So this is what the team will be using to get on top of support stuff, make sure things are answered. For milestone stuff, work that's actually scheduled, we're going to use GitHub milestones. And I made a PR for a GitHub action that needs to be fixed. There was a typo in there. But the goal is to, when you milestone an issue, it should go into a GitHub project with the same title as the milestone, so that there's a little bit less managing. You can just set one thing and it will go to the board. Currently there's a limitation that you can't add it when you just make the issue. You have to make the issue, then add it. But that's something that can be fixed later. And there was one more thing. Oh yeah, we're not tracking PRs on the boards. We're just going to track the issues, because we found tracking PRs and issues made a ton of noise. You ended up moving 2 or 3 things across the board, which just wasn't great. So I just wanted to share that update on what processes we're trying to follow. Yeah.
I really like the support board. I think that's super helpful. Right. And you wanted to talk about Ginkgo as well.
Yeah. So Frankie was asking about using Ginkgo. So I take the floor.
All right. So, one thing I learned in life is that everything is a trade-off. Nothing is free. And Kubernetes team and even KubeBuilder have decided that the cost of Ginkgo was worth the price. They got BDD out of it, behavior-driven development, where you can use very clear, easy to understand to non-developer language, such as like given. Gosh, I'm not very good with BDD. I'm very new to BDD, but as I understand it, they developed it so that maybe the Scrum leader or people who are not developers can understand what these tests do, and they write these tests beforehand. And this very user-centric. They say, if a user is doing this, I expect this. So it gives that kind of perspective into the tests. Other benefits of Ginkgo are these. They have Go Mega Matcher, so you don't have to use reflect deep equal kind of things, which, by the way, we currently use Testify to do that has a matcher and like assertions and things like that. Other reasons to use Ginkgo are it has neat little keywords. It has really pretty highlighting and colors. You can do, instead of using regular expressions with the -run, which Go tests use, you can use focus. You can, instead of writing code to wait for concurrent processing to finish. You can have, you can use Ginkgo expect. So there are these neat little features that Ginkgo provides, but I don't know, one thing I'd like to bring up, and I don't think we have time in this meeting to discuss, I'll bring it up in the Velero Slack channel, the Kubernetes Velero Slack channel, I'll bring it up, and I welcome more feedback from the community, is what would be the benefit for the Velero team to use Ginkgo. I feel like, and this is, I'm a true to the spirit Go developer, in that I really hesitate when bringing in frameworks to do something that requires just a few more lines of code with the standard library. So, and Ginkgo and Gomega are pretty big frameworks. We end up having to depend on them, having to read the docs to figure out what's going on. It has, I think, annoying quirks. Like, for example, anytime you use it before each, depending on the scope, you're going to have to run it before every single assertion. That's not intuitive nor obvious. You have to read the docs to know it. And I feel like if it was written just with the standard Go library, or even a simpler framework like Testify, a new Go developer or someone new to community who doesn't know BDD would be able to come and read it easily without having to refer to the docs. So these are the points I bring up, maybe before we go a little bit too far into depending on Ginkgo. And I noticed this because I'm starting to write some tests, some end-to-end tests. And by the way, we're bypassing most of Ginkgo right now as it is. So it doesn't feel like we really need it. So I'll bring up, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, thanks for bringing this up. I want us to focus the conversation a bit more. So Ginkgo is now used everywhere in Velero. Ginkgo is used in two places only. One is the controllers, and two, the second place is the E2E tests. Because I was the one who introduced Ginkgo in the controllers, I will explain why. It's because, so the controllers are moving to the runtime, controller runtime framework, and there has to be some environment configuration that happens before you can run the controllers. And the runtime controller, the KubeBuilder framework uses Ginkgo to accomplish that. So I use that as well. One, to be consistent with what the KubeBuilder controllers, how they are implemented and tested. But two, also because that problem was figured out, so I just had to follow the instructions. So for the E2E, I can't, there are people who can answer about the pros and cons of the Ginkgo, and but just to be clear, everywhere else in the code, there's no Ginkgo usage.
I can't say Ginkgo either.
Have you heard of the Ginkgo biloba?
spelling.
Have you heard of the Ginkgo biloba?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that's
the same Ginkgo.
Yeah, there's no second G in it though.
Is that right? I thought there was.
I don't know. And Nihongo de Ginkgo. So
there you go.
And I think it's a Japanese plant. Anyway, we wound up using Ginkgo in the EDE tests, mainly because we had to use something. And I'd heard that we were using Ginkgo for EDE testing in other places. So I thought there was a whole bunch of benefits to EDE testing that would come out of this, and there aren't. So I think it's going to depend like how many, I think the value that I see in it is if you have a very large test suite, there's some ways to describe and manage things. And I don't know if we'll, right now our cost in using Ginkgo is relatively small. And taking it out is not a big deal. Putting it in is not a big deal. So, if you're planning, 10, 15 tests, do what you want.
Cool.
Opinion. I think like we're booting up these tests, and I think I would like to see, I think we will benefit more. We And also whoever wants to contribute would benefit more from having consistency. So if I think at the beginning it's fine. Let's, try different things and see where the pain points are. But I think eventually it would benefit way more if we settled on one thing or over the other.
When
I
you say
personally don't even care. Like, consistency for me trumps everything else.
when you say consistency, do you mean like I like consistency too? From my perspective, for all the other tests we do, for all the unit tests, Velero uses Testify for consistency's sake. It'd be nice to just use Testify even with our end-to-end testing.
Well, the E2E tests are different kind of tests, so you might have different kind of needs from unit tests. I don't know, but if we are going to use Ginkgo, there is a way to do table tests with Ginkgo. Then that's what should be used. I'm not making a proposal here to use one or the other. I'm just saying that if that's what's decided, then that's what should be used. And otherwise, let's just yank it out and not use it at all.
Yeah, definitely. If the team decides to use it, I absolutely, will support it, and I have no problems with using Ginkgo.
Yeah, it's become one of these things where, so like the Cappy team was using Ginkgo. So it's like, okay, well, let's look at what they did and model it after them. But then the Cappy team shows up and says, well, we don't really like it. They're like, okay. Yeah. But the test group says, hey, you should use this. And honestly, I mean, after going through this thing, trying to wrap my head around it, it's like, it's like Oakland. There's no there.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's kind of a holy war. In my looking at it, it has the biggest thing I saw about Ginkgo was it had ways to do table tests, but it was really awkward. So combining Ginkgo and table tests was not really the way to go. If you wanted to do table tests, you do them.
Actually, let me jump in on that. I did it. I didn't find it awkward at all. I didn't know about those extensions you pointed me to.
Reading it felt awkward to me. I'll say that.
Okay.
Reading it didn't look like it was the way the library was designed for, because it didn't use any of like the BDD stuff. And I actually have this problem with Go in general. It's sometimes hard to associate a test failure with the test.
Just a quick time check. We're at time. If you want to continue a few more minutes, I think that's fine. If people want to stay on,
we can go a few more minutes. I think the Ginkgo discussion is kind of a holy war, just like that exchange just now. The readability is subjective. Code awkwardness is subjective. I kind of don't have an opinion other than it's an extra dependency. I'd need to evaluate it before I drew a line in the sand and see, like, what if we rewrote the controller runtime ones and Testify? How hard is that to get the consistency?
you want to pick this up in the new year?
Yeah,
I'm saying that a bunch.
That seems like a new year kind of topic. Let's start the new year off with the new thoughts on end-to-end testing.
Sounds good. Let's do that. All right. Last thing we have then. Thank you so much, Frankie, for bringing this up.
Oh, thank you for letting me.
Last thing we have are the contributor shoutouts. The last contributor shoutouts of 2020. Let's go, Nolan.
Yeah, so the first two were actually kind of related. The top one was a follow-up from the second one. They were both from, I apologize, Matheus Juvelino. This is for introducing owner references in the backup object, which he needed for getting proper tracking in Argo. So the backups were basically created by the schedule, and Argo needed to see that the backups were owned by the schedule. So this introduces an option to use Velero in such a way that the schedules are owned by, I'm sorry, the backups are owned by a schedule. This is not the default. It may become the default, but no promises there yet. So thank you very much, Methodist, for both of those. The next one is from I'm Jokey. It is documentation. I'm not sure what they're Jokey. I think they're based in China. The change here was contributing some documentation on how to use Velero with the Tencent S3 compatible object store. So this was really cool. If you are based somewhere where you can use Tencent, you now have documentation for how to use Velero with it. Next up was some docs fixing from Nemeth. Fixing up, this is Ferenc Nemeth. Looks like this was fixing up some Hugo tables. Appreciate fixing up those and making our documentation links work. The next one, this is huge. Thank you, Yusuf, for getting this one around. This makes restoring node ports on services much more likely to succeed. And Yusuf did a lot of testing here to make sure that this was consistent. Before, using node ports with Velero was not always guaranteed to get the right behavior, but with this change, you can preserve the node ports and get them restored in a much more predictable manner. So thank you for your efforts in coding this and testing this, Yusuf. And then finally, this is one from Jen Ting, the last one before we'll probably get him added to the maintainers list. Jen Ting's been taking on a lot of our CLI enhancement work that we had scheduled for 1.6. And this one is a big change to add a field to BSLs or backup storage location, custom resources to configure the default. So this makes it possible to eventually remove a flag from the Velero server, which was the only way to configure this, and make this a much more accessible, user-defined way of doing this without having to do server restarts. So thank you very much, Jen Ting.
Awesome. And with that, that's the end of the last Velero community meeting of 2020. We wish you all a fantastic time off during the holidays, and see you all in the new year on January 5th. Have a good one, folks.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good one. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.